Hi everyone. I'm going to give you another tutorial on the first project, the typographic self-portrait. You should by now have already watched the demo that Mr. Perez made for you. I'm going to go ahead and follow that up with another demo, just mainly because we're teaching the same thing, but we teach things a little bit differently. We both kind of emphasize different things, and I think it would be beneficial to you if you kind of got to see more than one way of doing getting the same result. And so I'm going to go ahead and walk through some of the steps that you're going to be doing on this first project, and just point out things a little bit differently. It's not like one's right and the other's wrong or anything like that. Just a couple of things more that I'd like you to know, and a couple of little cheats you can do to make this a little easier. The first thing I'm going to do when I create my new file, my new artboard, I'm going to go ahead and intentionally make a mistake. Because I want you to see something. I want you to understand. So here's my new document, and the assignment calls for an artboard with a format of 8.5 by 11. Now that means that it's going to be what's called portrait orientation as opposed to landscape orientation. It's going to be taller than it is wide. You can see that my format is incorrect because it's 11 inches wide by 8.5 inches tall. It's the landscape format. Whenever you do any assignment, you're going to be given very precise guidelines for what your format should be, and you have to follow them exactly. So let's think about this in terms of what if this was a layout for a page in a magazine, and that magazine is 8.5 inches wide by 11 inches tall, and you go and do a layout on a page that's 11 inches wide by 8.5 inches tall. It's not going to fit, and it's going to be wrong, and you would either have to go back and redo it or get fired or whatever. So let me show you how you can change this very easily. This is your artboard tool right here. Okay, so it's the little thing that looks kind of like a checkerboard, I guess. Just click on that, and if you notice, you've got little dotted lines and little handlebars that show up. Now you can always change the size of an artboard manually, just by grabbing a corner. But since we have precise measurements, let's go ahead and do it precisely. You can see here the width is 11 and the height is 8.5. We just want to shift that around, do a switch there. We've got 8.5 for the width, and you can see that has temporarily given me a square format, which is pretty neat, but not what I want. Okay, 8.5 by 8.5. Let me go ahead and change that other 8.5 to 11, and let me just zoom out one click. And there we go. Okay. Now, when Mr. Perez did his demo, he used a picture of the Mona Lisa. I'm going to go ahead and use a photograph of myself, since that's what you guys will be doing. You're going to be doing self-portraits. So, and I'm going to just show you another way. It's not better or worse. It's just another way you can think about things to get that JPEG image into your file. What he did was he went File, Place, and that's a perfectly good way to do it. Another way to do it, and this is probably just kind of a little bit more coming from a person who's done a lot of Photoshop, I actually go ahead and open the file. Okay, so let's see, there's my picture right there. And it's open in another window here. And notice that it's activated. It's got the little blue handlebars going around it, and I've got to make sure it's selected or I can't do anything. And I'm just going to simply copy it to my clipboard. And that's like any other program, and you need to memorize it. It's Command C if you're in a Mac environment. I'm not sure exactly what it is in Windows, but you guys already should know what that is. Okay, so I'm going to copy it. I can close this out now. And I'm just going to come back in and either Command V or, edit, paste, and there it is. Okay, now there's something that's, just right off the bat very different about mine than from the one Mr. Perez did. We had kind of two separate problems. If you'll recall, when he put the Mona Lisa on his artboard, the picture was huge. If you recall, he had to scale the picture down to fit, and he had to zoom out, until his artboard kind of was about postage stamp size on his screen. Reason being that the edges of his the edges of his Mona Lisa picture were out here somewhere, and he needed to get zoomed all the way out so that he could find that corner. To grab, and remember holding the shift key and drag. Okay, so mine kind of has the opposite problem. It's not big enough. I mean, yes, surely everything fits on this page, but I've got an awful lot of space that's not being utilized, and unless I had good reason for that, I was going to put some text in there or something, and that's for a different project. I need to utilize this entire space. I don't want to put some little tiny picture right in the middle of a great big piece of board and consider that a good composition. We need to activate the entire board. We need to make sure that we're utilizing all of the space and drawing attention to all four edges. We call this empty space outside the picture negative space, and it's important, and it needs to be balanced with your positive image. And it's so I'm going to, again, don't forget, hold your shift key. I'm going to scale up, the opposite of what he did with the Mona Lisa. He scaled down. Okay, now my picture already, my format is different from the 8.5 by 11. If you'll notice, my picture is almost square as opposed to rectangular. It's just slightly wider than it is tall. I think I'd already cropped it a couple of times. This was my Facebook profile for a while, so that's kind of why it looks like a square. And if anybody who's done a Facebook profile, of course, you have to crop the picture, right? So this should be nothing new. It's just this time I'm resizing the picture to fit a rectangular format as opposed to a square format. That's the only difference. Now I, at the moment, am having a hard time seeing the edges of my artboard. Anything that extends beyond the edges of the artboard is not going to be part of the picture. It's not going to be there, but it's kind of distracting me. So I'm going to go ahead now. I'm going to click on my transparency window, my transparency palette. If transparency palette is not already visible over here on the side, all of your palettes are under window. Okay, so transparency is already checked, so that means it's open. And I'm going to clicked off my picture. It's not going to know what to do unless I've got this picture clicked, right? I'm going to go ahead and bring my opacity down to 40%. This picture is not permanent. This isn't going to be part of the final result. So it's really nothing more than just kind of a guide, something that, I can just kind of barely see. So you'll see that the picture is already here in layer 1. And I'm going to go ahead and, I'm going to go ahead and make the picture the same exact height as my artboard. And then, of course, that means that I've got some decisions to make regarding what do I want to keep and what do I want to crop. And this is kind of where looking at this negative space comes into play. We've got, 2 large areas of negative space and 2 small areas of negative space, and they need to feel balanced. And so, the first one is right here. You can see this curve and the way it, reacts with the edge of the paper here. Here's another one. Okay, see that? I'm not going to draw the car in there, so this is all just going to be a big piece of white space. Got a little triangle right here, and probably where the crown of the head is, I've got a little triangle here. So I'm going to go ahead and say I'm going to crop it a little bit. It's perfectly okay to crop off, you know, part of the head or whatever. You know, kind of as a rule of thumb that I go by is either crop it or don't, you know, like don't bring something just like right touching the edge. It just usually looks a little better if, you know, it looks intentional, you know, so go ahead and crop it or don't crop it is, you know, most of you are going to find you have kind of an innate sensibility for this anyway. Okay, but let's say I'm happy with it like this. And just like Mr. Perez did, I'm going to go ahead and lock that layer, okay? So that way, when I'm working with all my letters and everything, they're going to be on different layers. Now, let me show you something that I recommend doing. You do not have to do this. This is just a tip that I think will make life easier for you. I'm actually going to create a number of layers, and I'm going to work on each one separately. The reason being that I'm going to get a whole bunch of letters all piled up on top of one another. And it's going to start making it really hard for me to isolate a single letter, you know, click on it and move it or rescale it or whatever I want to do. So I'm going to have, you know, I'm just going to have each part of the face get a layer to itself. Okay, so here's how you make a new layer. I'm going to name this hair. Okay, new layer, nose. New layer, eyes. New layer, mouth. And I'll just do one more for like contours. How about that? You know, edges of the face, that kind of thing. Okay. And so I'm going to lock every layer that I'm not working on. I'm going to be working here on the hair layer. And before I start doing anything, I just want to point out real quick, notice that each layer is color-coded. Okay, if you remember when I was working on layer 1, I had a little blue box with handlebars, grabber corners and everything around the outside of my object. Well, on the hair layer, those little guidelines are going to be red. On the nose, they're going to be green, and so on and so forth. Okay, so I've got everything locked down. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to start picking out letters that I can start kind of playing around with. And I'm just going to focus on the hair for now. The hair is kind of easy. And so, you know, maybe you want to start with that. It's fun. You know, one thing he showed you that you can do is that type on a path tool. And I agree with him. It's a really cool thing to do, but it's you know, don't overdo that aspect of it because, you know, I really want you to be looking at the alphabet, at the various fonts, and trying to identify shapes of letters that you know, sync nicely with, you know, curves that you see. So here's a little trick I'm going to show you, okay? Off to the side here, now this isn't going to be on your picture, this gray area here, if this is my paper, then I'm going to consider this like my desk, you know, that I'm working around it. I'm going to go ahead and, whoops, got to make sure I'm on the right layer. It won't let me do anything. I'm going to go ahead and get my type tool, and I'm going to just type out the alphabet. It's a little small there. Let me go into character and make this bigger. Let's do this. 12 is just too small. Okay, so, and by the way, you need to have your character palette out. If it's not open, it'll be under window and then type. I think he showed you that in the last video, so I'm not gonna repeat it. But, you know, just so I can see what I'm doing, these are not going to be permanent parts of the picture. I just have them there to look at. I think it's gonna make things easier for me. I know my alphabet after all those years of graduate school. Aren't you glad? Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and put all the numbers and everything too. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. All the punctuation. because you can use all of this stuff. You know, hold down my shift key and do the rest of the punctuation and special characters. There we go. Okay, so I've got all of this to work with now. Remember that the assignment calls for the assignment calls for using several different typefaces, at least 8. I zoomed down a little bit so that I've got some more space to work with. So let me show you what I recommend doing. Take that first alphabet that you created, whatever typeface it is, duplicate it. Okay, remember, just, you know, hold your Option key with your black arrow, and it'll work. Take your type tool, highlight over all the letters, and then come into your character palette here, and this is kind of cool. If you click on the name of the typeface and start scrolling using your up and down arrows, isn't that cool? It's giving me some of those dingbat things. It's gonna let me see the entire alphabet of every font that I have installed in my computer. And what I think I want to do is have a number of typefaces up and available to me so that I can just look at them at a glance and you know, see if they're going to work for me or not. You know, like instead of going, I think this looks like a C or a J or whatever, you know, like let me just look at this alphabet here and see if there's anything in here, you know, that has a curve that, you know, kind of matches this curve right here. So I'm going to just duplicate it several times, and remember, it has to be highlighted, and then you have to click on the name of the typeface in your character palette, and then it's your up and down arrow. Let's see, do I like these? I'm kind of looking at the lowercase letters here, thinking, you know, what would be good for the hair. Now the parentheses are always really easy to use. Don't overdo them. Why don't you save the parentheses for when you just really can't come up with any other letter? Try to make an actual letter or number fit if you can. Let's see. And what I'm doing right now is I'm looking for typefaces that are, you know, a little bit script-like and not bold. You know, I'm not going to be able to work with, say, where's that really fat one I had just a minute ago? Yeah, that fat one right there. I'm not going to be able to work with it. That one, yuck. That's going to be awful for this. You know, I'm looking for something that's kind of maybe slanted a little bit. I can always go into, not all of them have it, but I can always go and look at the, if they have italic as an option. Okay, and maybe in my case, an italic is what I want. So you know, you're going to have more options than, you know, you're going to have so many options. It's probably going to be hard to even just decide where to get started. But you know, I would do this with several. You know, I would just copy and paste this alphabet several times and do several different variations so that you've got a lot of things to choose from. On your desktop. Now you're going to have to delete all of this stuff before you finalize your document. Okay, and also whatever alphabets I have typed on the hair layer, once that layer is locked and I move on to the next layer, I'm not going to be able to use them unless I copy them over to that layer, because all these are on the hair layer. Okay, so I'm just going to make like a couple of little decisions here and then you know, move on to the next thing. I was going to do the hair, but I just saw a letter that I think would be awesome for the eyes. So let me click off of the hair layer and let me go into eyes instead. And I'm going to get my text tool, and this Q right here just might be perfect. Oops, see, I already made a mistake myself because I just went and did exactly what I told you guys not to do. I'm going to go ahead and copy this entire alphabet off of the hair. Edit, copy, lock the hair layer. and go to the eyes layer, and I'll just paste it again over here. There we go. Gonna have an awful lot of, stuff all over my desktop, but at the end of the day, it's easy enough to delete. Okay, I'm gonna highlight the letter Q and copy it. And again, I recommend just going ahead and memorizing those shortcuts, Command C, okay? And I paste it, Command V. And now I'm gonna zoom in just a bit. Okay, so I like this letter Q because it looks kind of like a top eyelid with an iris, don't you think? The only problem is it's going the wrong way. There's two ways that I can get a mirror image of this. I can either go to Object, Transform, Reflect, and then I have to go into this little dialog box or whatever, or I can use the Reflect tool over here. And when I click on the Reflect tool, it also serves as a rotate tool, but I see no reason to ever use the rotate tool because you can do that more easily in a different way. You have to actually kind of click and drag, and then that will turn your excuse me, that'll turn your letter around or whatever it is you're working with. Now remember, you are allowed to rotate, you are allowed to make mirror image, by reflecting, and you are allowed to make things bigger or smaller. You're not allowed to reshape the letter, okay? These letters are perfect the way they are. If the designer wanted it to be more compressed like that, the designer would have given you a version of it that's more compressed like that, okay? If this letter isn't compressed enough, then go find another font or another, letter in the alphabet that does. But this looks pretty good here, and I'm going to go ahead and just duplicate this for the other eye. The other eye's a little, whoops, what happened there? Didn't take for some reason. Okay, let's try that again. Got to get my little double-headed arrow or it's not going to work. There we go. Okay, now this other eye is a little bit closer. It's a slightly different angle. I'm going to make it just a little bit bigger because we can see a little bit more of it this time. There we go. Let's go ahead and make a dot in the center of those while we're at it. Let's get a punctuation here. How about just a plain old period? Just copy that. You can copy it or you can just type it. It doesn't really matter. Okay. Move that into the center there and duplicate it. Move it over here. Let's see, how about if I maybe go and, let's say I get a parentheses to do like the eyelids. Don't overdo the parentheses because they're super easy to work with. And at this point, I might even want to change. I'm just going to use this one because of time, but I might want to say, hey, this parentheses is like not really curvy enough. I might want to switch to a different typeface. I'm just doing this quickly. As a demonstration. Where's my letter? There it is. Nope. Oh, I see what I did. Okay, sorry you guys. I'm trying to do this quickly and I kind of messed up. Even the teacher messes up sometimes, just so you know. We make mistakes too. Okay, very good. So, the parentheses are super, super easy to work with. And so if I see that you've just like done an entire, portrait using nothing but parentheses, that's not going to impress me as much as if you try to get some variety in there, okay? And you can really come in and fine-tune this stuff if you want. Now at this point, I want to see if everything's going, the way I want it to. Let's go ahead and temporarily turn off that first layer so I can see what it looks like. And I'm pretty happy with that. That looks pretty good. You know, I'll probably, if this was my project that I was handing in, I'd probably go ahead and do some more work on it. You know, there's another line that kind of comes up under the eye, or maybe not. You know, maybe you want to be minimal. You know, the thing that's really nice about this working digitally is you can try something, and if it doesn't work, all you do is click it and it's gone. Okay. So let's see, at this point, I've done an awful lot of work on this, and I don't want to have like a power failure or something and lose all this work without having saved it. So let's go ahead and save. And remember, I want you guys to name your files exactly as I specify. So since my name is Phyllis Leverich, I'm going to go capital P, capital L, and then the rest of my name in lowercase. And I'm going to, this is project 1, so I'm going to put an O1 next to it, no dots or dashes, no nothing. Okay, just first initial, last initial, both capitalized, the rest of the last name in lowercase, O1. Don't use my name, use your name. Okay, and then by default, you're going to be in your native environment here, which is Adobe Illustrator. We can talk later about you know, changing that into into another format, you know, for submission. But go ahead and save it. And please keep these in a safe place. I am going to ask you to take all these non-JPEG files and put them like in a Dropbox or something. I'm just not quite ready to figure out where I want to go with that. Now, I've already got a file that I started earlier with the same name, so I'm actually going to replace it. You know, just be careful about that. When this opens up, just ignore. Okay, so this is, you know, this is where I would go with this. I would, you know, maybe say, okay, let's stop working on the eyes for a while, and you know, let's go back to the hair layer. And remember, you need to, not only do you need to unlock the layer, but it needs to be highlighted. You know, so if you've unlocked hair but you're still highlighting eyes up here, you're gonna get frustrated. You know, so remember that all of this stuff is on the hair layer. Okay, now when you go to hand this in, this is very important. You got to get rid of this. This is a sloppy file. Okay, we don't turn in to our clients or our professors or whatever. We don't turn in sloppy files. And if there's one character, you know, even if there's just like, say, you know, a single comma, you know, over here, let's just say, you know, there's a single little punctuation mark way over here. It's gonna be in the file, and you don't want it. So, you know, a lot of times what I recommend doing, let me just throw a couple more little unwanted items over here. You know, I've got like a couple of random letters here and there. Click off of it and click the T again. Let's put one over here. Okay, so, you know, even though when I'm zoomed in, I can't see them, they're there, okay, and I need to get rid of them. So, whoops, I just did something I didn't want to do. If you ever zoom in too much, just double click the hand tool and it'll take you back to where you want to be. Okay. Sorry, I'm having trouble zooming out for some reason. That's weird. Okay, well, let me just kind of scroll over here. I'm not sure what's going on, so I don't want to take up too much of your time. But, you know, what you can do when you're zoomed out is just draw a box around everything. Sometimes you can't even see it. Okay, I really do want to zoom out. I don't know why it's not letting me. Some setting I messed up on here. But what you're going to want to do then is, you know, make sure that you're zoomed out, and you know, make sure you can see all the stuff that's over here. Okay, that needs to go too. And sometimes it might even be something you can't hardly see, you know, because maybe it's, you know, maybe you've made it kind of transparent or something. So, you know, make sure that your file is nice and clean before you hand it in. Let me go ahead and, you know, clean up this eyes layer as well. Delete that. Okay, save it that one last time. And then, you know, you're going to be posting a JPEG of this in the discussions for a critique later. And so let's do the save for web. And let's choose JPEG. Let's see what happens if we just go ahead and tell it 100% quality. If this makes the files too big, I may tell you not to do that next time, but you know, I'm not really sure. So just go ahead and save it. Oops, I forgot to do one thing. See, I told you we make mistakes too. I'll go ahead and show you what happens if I save it like this. Okay, let's pretend like I made that mistake on purpose. Okay, so here's my JPEG. Where did it go? I'm gonna put that on my desktop. I couldn't find it. Okay, there we go. Here's my JPEG. Okay, I'm just gonna open that up in preview, and you can see that it's wrong. Okay, what did I forget to do before I saved that for web? Can anybody guess what I forgot to do? I forgot to close out the layer with my photograph on it. And if you save it as a JPEG, without turning that layer off, you're gonna get it looking like this. And this is not what we want, you know. So let me go back to my Illustrator file and click off of the photograph before I export it as a JPEG. File, save for web, JPEG, save. Make sure you know where it's going. I always get frustrated when and I'm actually going to be replacing this bad file with the new one. It's going to say, are you sure you want to do this? You want to replace this? Yes, I do, because I messed up the first time. Okay, now let's go back to the desktop and open that up in preview. And now you've got, you know, a couple of creepy eyes staring at you with nothing else. So I hope that this was helpful. You know, just kind of pointing out a few more things you can try, pointing out a few more things that can potentially go wrong. And so just you know, always if you get stuck, Google it. I got stuck a little while ago and I Googled it and I figured out within 30 seconds what